I fell in love with my brother's roommate at first sight. I spent nearly 3 weeks cultivating this breathless, high-pitched princess voice, practically purring whenever he walked into the room, only to find out he absolutely loathes sweet, girly girls. The realization shattered me. In a fit of sheer, dramatic panic, I hijacked his live stream, typing like a woman possessed. Hilarious. Honestly, you're not even my type. You uptight poser. I already have a new man. He's a college quarterback, sweet, gorgeous, and doesn't look like he's running on empty. That night, for the first time in his legendary sports career, the cold god of gaming shut down his stream mid-match. I didn't even make it halfway out of the building before he caught me in the stairwell. Trembling, crying, begging for mercy in the shadows, the pink silk bow on the front of my dress shredded under his fingers. "Heather," he whispered, his breath hot and dangerous against my ear. "Even bad girls have to be punished." My older brother, Brandon, was a certified player, but recently he seemed to have retired from the field. Lately, he was practically a monk, locked up in his off-campus apartment. No clubbing, no bars, and he'd even ruthlessly turned down several invitations from gorgeous women. Our parents grew highly suspicious. They were terrified Brandon was hiding some poor, innocent girl in his den of iniquity, tricking her with his charm. Naturally, they dispatched me to his apartment to investigate. I rang the doorbell. No answer. Frustrated, I pounded heavily on the heavy wood door. "Brandon Colton, exactly how many food deliveries did you order?" A voice answered from the other side, deep, cold, and entirely unfamiliar. 1 second. My heart did a violent little flip. My mother's instincts were spot on. Brandon's apartment actually had a secret resident. But the sister-in-law sounded incredibly intimidating, like someone who didn't tolerate nonsense. I was busy conjuring up an image of a fierce, sophisticated older woman when the door was pulled open. I looked up. There was no beautiful, intimidating older sister. Instead, I was staring at a face so ridiculously handsome it stole the breath right out of my lungs. He was easily 6'3", with pale skin, sharp, aristocratic features, and a chilly aura that screamed, "Do not cross me." He possessed a lean, muscular frame that even his casual gray t-shirt couldn't hide, and an effortless, quiet wealth radiated from his very posture. I stood there, completely enraged, unable to even blink. Then a shocking realization hit me. Had my brother actually pulled a god-tier hunk? Had Brandon gone on a journey of self-discovery and brought home a boyfriend who looked like a literal runway model? Every single cell in my body was suddenly screaming. He was down to the very last detail, my exact type. I had to have him. If I didn't get this man's number, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. And if he really was my brother's boyfriend, well, Brandon and I would just have to fight for him fairly. "Hi," I said, tilting my head to offer my sweetest, most dazzling smile. "I'm Brandon's sister, Heather Colton." My mother was a beauty-obsessed woman who had married a strikingly handsome man, and I had been lucky enough to inherit their best features. All my life, teachers and classmates had told me my smile could melt glaciers. But right now, my face was practically aching from smiling so hard, and the man's expression remained as cool and still as winter. His eyes swept briefly over my outfit, a pleated navy schoolgirl skirt, thigh-high white socks, and a tiny cropped cardigan, before he stepped back to let me in. "Brandon is in the shower," he explained, his tone even and brief. "I'm his roommate." Roommate. I let out a long, silent breath of pure relief. Thank God. He wasn't the boyfriend. Once we sat down in the living room, he handed me a chilled bottle of strawberry cream soda. I seized the opportunity. As I took the bottle, my fingers deliberately brushed against his palm. I pitched my voice into a soft, breathless coo. "A guy this handsome must have a really beautiful name." He paused, looking at me with a steady, unreadable gaze. Beckett Song. He seemed slightly caught off guard by the fact that a girl who looked like a quiet, sweet student would flirt so aggressively. "What a coincidence," I said, my eyes shining with manufactured excitement. "A fortune teller once told me my future husband would have that exact name." "Superstition is a bad habit," Beckett replied, his voice entirely flat. "The fortune teller lied to you. You shouldn't go back." I choked on my own breath. Talk about a romance killer. I pushed forward anyway. "Someone as amazing as you must have girls lining up to date you, right?" Instead of looking flattered, Beckett remained entirely indifferent. "Not really. Then can I be first in line?" I asked softly, gently tugging at his sleeve, looking up at him with the most innocent, earnest eyes I could muster. Beckett's heavy lids lifted slightly, his dark eyes locking onto mine. "Dating too young will ruin your grades." "What?" I sat up straight, my brain stalling. After all my heavy-handed flirting, this man thought I was a high schooler? What an absolute tragedy. I squared my shoulders and puffed out my chest. Beckett, I'm in college. I emphasized the word, making sure he got the point. Then, complaining about the heat, I casually slid my baby blue cardigan off my shoulders. Beckett's eyes followed the movement, drifting downward for a fraction of a second before he instantly looked away. His expression remained perfectly blank. I'll go get the air conditioning remote. Don't worry about it, I said, sliding closer to him. I could smell the faint scent of his clean, cedarwood soap. AC isn't eco-friendly. Besides, you look so delightfully cool. Why don't we just… Before I could finish, Brandon walked out of the bathroom, drying his hair with a towel, and sat down directly between us. I'll let you two siblings catch up, Beckett said, rising smoothly and politely retreating to his room. I instinctively wanted to follow him, but Brandon caught me by the collar. Through the crack of Beckett's door, I could only see the glow of a high-end dual-monitor gaming setup. Heather, take a piece of advice from your brother, Brandon said, lowering his voice to a harsh whisper. Drop the fantasy. Wake up. Do not mess with Beckett's song. Who's messing with him? I muttered, feeling a little defensive. With a face like that, he was clearly the one messing with my peace of mind first. Besides, Brandon was supposed to be in the shower. How much of our conversation had he actually heard? Brandon reached over and aggressively ruffled my pigtails. We've both been playing the field for years, Heather. Don't play innocent with me. You looked like you wanted to devour him whole.
Fine, I grumbled.
But I really like him. Didn't you teach me that if you like someone, you go after them with everything you've got? Brandon pinched the bridge of his nose, exhaling a long sigh. Kid, Beckett is different. He's from an incredibly old-money, strict family. The guy's never even had a girlfriend. He doesn't know how to deal with a little predator like you. But physical attraction is a perfectly valid starting point, I argued in a small voice. Then, remembering why I was here, I squinted at him.
Wait.
If you and Beckett are living here alone, where's my sister-in-law? Which one? Brandon asked dryly. I stared at him. Look, Brandon shrugged. I've been taking a break to grind the new Wukong game. I haven't had time to date anyone. Mystery solved. No wonder Brandon hadn't been leaving the house. He was just pulled into a massive gaming binge. Does Beckett play games too? I asked, remembering the lit-up screen I'd glimpsed. Brandon waved a dismissive hand. Him? Yeah. He's a little worse than me. I was shocked. Worse than my brother? He had to be absolute trash at gaming. Over the next few weeks, Beckett and I rarely saw each other in person. Most of our communication happened over text. No matter how I tried to flirt, asking him innocent questions about my college calculus homework, he managed to steer the conversation back to academics with surgical precision. After a month, our romantic progress was absolute zero, though my math grades had never been higher. My roommate, Chloe, finally offered a different perspective. Heather, men find a girl most attractive when she's dominating in her own element. What are you good at? The only thing I could think of where I might have an upper hand on Beckett was gaming. I immediately opened his contact, which I had saved as husband, and sent a sweet, breathy voice note. Hey, are you playing games tonight? Want to play together? I can carry you. No, came his predictable, swift rejection. I kept pushing. It's okay if you're bad, Beckett. I'm really good. This time, his reply was incredibly brief. Sorry. I'm streaming. Streaming? Did he stream his terrible gameplay as some sort of comedy routine? The more I thought about it, the more suspicious I became. I quickly opened a search engine and typed in his name. Within seconds, my jaw hit the floor. The man my brother claimed was worse than him was actually the reigning MVP of the Pro League, a legendary esports champion nicknamed the Reaper for his brutal, merciless play style. And I had just offered to carry him. Before the mortification could fully paralyze me, I found his stream link and clicked in. There he was, sitting in his gaming chair, looking exactly like he did in person.
Quiet, distant,
aloof. When he wasn't smiling, he looked entirely untouchable. He was pulling in millions of viewers purely on his god-tier mechanics and that face. His chat was usually focused on strategy, but because of my text, some unusual comments were slipping through. Who was that girl who texted Reaper saying he was bad? And why did he actually reply to her in the middle of a match? LMAO. I'm cringing for her. Imagine telling a world champion you'll carry him. I stared at the screen, my face burning. A little later, the stream host announced a viewer giveaway. They would select one viewer for a live voice call, and they could ask Beckett for a small wish. I threw all shame out the window. Under the username Beckett's wife, I began furiously spamming the chat. Husband,
pick me.
My school just paved a new road today. It's called No Way Out of Loving You. Beckett, you're stepping on my hair. If we have a baby, I'll let them take your last name. My shameless, chaotic energy quickly broke through the sea of standard gaming comments. Beckett looked at the screen, his eyes narrowing slightly as if his vision was being assaulted. He gestured to the moderator. Pick her. The chat erupted. Reaper is ruthless. He's going to publicly execute this fan. Don't you guys know? Beckett absolutely despises obsessive fangirls. He's probably just going to give her a polite warning to behave. Everyone, including Beckett, probably assumed I'd back out of the call from embarrassment. But I clicked accept within a millisecond. Shame?
What was that?
Could shame help me land a gorgeous billionaire's son? The stream host laughed, reading my username aloud. Beckett's wife. Welcome. What is your wish? My camera turned on, and my eyes met Beckett's through the screen. His dark pupils contracted slightly, a flicker of genuine surprise crossing his otherwise stoic face. Beckett, I said, resting my chin in my hands, putting on my sweetest, most teasing voice. Can I get a kiss? Under the gaze of millions of viewers, Beckett coolly replied. No. The chat flooded with comments. Oh my god, she actually asked that. Can I come over and look at your abs? I continued. No, he said, perfectly deadpan. Will you call me baby or wifey? In your dreams. I felt like I was interacting with an AI bot, and it was honestly thrilling. You're so good at this, Beckett. My brother lied to me. Your fingers are so incredibly flexible, and the pink on your knuckles is so pretty. It would look even prettier on my skin, I added silently in my mind. Beckett maintained his polite, chilly distance, parrying every single one of my advances. As his scheduled stream time neared its end, I finally threw down my real card. Take me out to dinner, Beckett. He stared at his camera for a long moment. Then, his lips parted. Okay. Love you, husband. I blew a kiss to the camera and immediately disconnected the call. The host was grinning, and the chat was in absolute chaos. She's like a sweet strawberry shortcake. I don't know if Reaper was charmed, but I certainly am. I can't believe I just witnessed this live. Is this a romantic comedy? I've been following Reaper for 3 years, and this is the first time I've ever seen a girl get close to him. Are they secretly dating? The straightforward girl always wins the quiet guy. I bet he falls for her. No way, she goes to my college. She's a total social butterfly. They're from completely different worlds. On the day of our dinner, I woke up at 6 in the morning. I selected my absolute best dress, a pastel piece with a delicate pink silk bow at the collar. I spent 2 hours applying a flawless, no makeup look. I spun around in front of my roommate. How do I look? Chloe gave me a thumbs up. Like a princess. Satisfied, I arrived at the restaurant 40 minutes early. I immediately ordered a full steak dinner for myself and devoured it. That way, when Beckett arrived, I could eat 2 bites of a salad and pretend I had the delicate appetite of a bird. I was happily chewing on my last bite of steak when I heard a familiar voice. I looked up to find Beckett standing there, staring at my empty plate with a highly complex expression. Even in my embarrassment, I couldn't help but admire him. Unlike his usual gaming hoodies, he was wearing a crisp, tailored white shirt buttoned all the way to his collar and dark trousers that emphasized his long, powerful legs. He looked incredibly sophisticated, and the restraint of his outfit only made him look sexier. I wondered if he had dressed like this on purpose, knowing exactly what it did to me. The waiter just brought this by mistake, I said, my voice entirely confident despite the lie. I told him I didn't want it, but he insisted. Beckett listened to my terrible excuse, his lips twitching into a tiny, rare smile. The waiter walked over, handing us the menus. What else would you like? Beckett asked. I quickly slipped back into my sweet persona, smiling warmly. I'm already full. My appetite is quite small. You should just order for yourself. The waiter looked confused. Miss Colton, did you still want the double order of truffle mac and cheese you requested with the steak then? The private room fell into a dead, agonizing silence. The dinner ended up being a very quiet affair, with Beckett quietly ordering a few signature dishes to save me from further embarrassment. A few glasses of red wine later, the alcohol began to warm my blood. I slid my foot out of my heel under the table, letting my toes brush lightly against his trouser leg, slowly tracing upward. He moved his leg away, but I immediately followed, pressing closer. This time, I bumped against something solid and remarkably firm. Beckett looked up, his dark eyes darkened by a sudden, heavy intensity. Heather, stop. My patience isn't as limitless as you think. I blinked, sensing a sudden shift in him that I couldn't quite define. He quietly sliced a fresh piece of steak and placed it on my plate. You're still growing.
Eat.
That word, growing, bothered me. I didn't call him husband because I wanted to be his little sister. The wine gave me a sudden burst of courage. I reached across, grabbed his collar, and pulled him down into the seat next to me. Before he could react, I straddled his lap, my voice dripping with honey. Husband, do kids do this to you? Get up, Heather, or I'm throwing you out the window, Beckett said, his hand landing with a firm, swatting pressure just below my waist. It wasn't hard, but the sheer intimacy of the contact sent a shiver straight down my spine. You wouldn't dare, I whispered, staring at his lips. I leaned down, but just as our lips were about to touch, a sharp knock sounded on the door. I flinched, pulling back quickly, and my elbows slammed hard against the edge of the table. Are you made of glass, Heather? Though his voice was exasperated, his hands were incredibly gentle as he lifted my arm to inspect the rapidly reddening skin. Before we could adjust, the door swung open. The lingering tension in the room instantly turned into a cold, sharp awkwardness. I looked toward the door. Standing there was a highly elegant, sophisticated young woman. She was tall, impeccably dressed, with a classic, refined beauty that made her look like she belonged in a museum. But the way her eyes swept over me made me instantly uncomfortable. She froze at the entrance, looking shocked. Beckett, I'm so sorry. Am I interrupting something? The temperature in the room seemed to plummet instantly. I scrambled off Beckett's lap, my face burning with a mixture of embarrassment and indignation. I tried to smooth down my pleated skirt, but the delicate pink silk bow at my collar felt suddenly tight, like a noose. Beckett didn't flinch. He adjusted his collar with slow, methodical movements, his expression returning to its default state of absolute, icy calm. He didn't look at me, nor did he look particularly pleased to see the newcomer. Vivian, Beckett said, his voice devoid of any warmth. What are you doing here? Your aunt told me you were dining here tonight, Vivian replied, stepping into the room with effortless poise. Every movement she made was textbook perfection, the kind of grace that only came from generations of strict etiquette training. She looked at me, a polite but patronizing smile gracing her lips. I see you're babysitting Brandon's little sister. Brandon really shouldn't trouble you with his family obligations. Babysitting. The word stung. She had read the room, seen me practically straddling him, and yet she chose to reduce me to an annoying child. Heather is not a trouble, Beckett said flatly. He stood up, his towering 6'3" frame instantly dominating the space. And we were having a private dinner. If you have business from my family, we can discuss it at the office tomorrow. Vivian's smile tightened slightly, but she maintained her impeccable composure. Of course. I didn't mean to intrude on your charity work. Have a lovely evening, Beckett. Little Heather, don't eat too many sweets. It's bad for your
Teeth.
With a soft, elegant nod, she turned and swept out of the room, closing the door behind her with a gentle, barely audible click. I stood there, my hands clenched into tight fists. My pride was in absolute tatters. I looked at the beautifully sliced piece of steak Beckett had placed on my plate, suddenly feeling a wave of intense nausea. I need to use the restroom, I mumbled, not waiting for his response as I bolted out of the room. In the lavishly decorated restroom, I splashed cold water on my face. No makeup. Makeup look I had spent 2 hours applying was slightly smudged around my eyes. I looked at my reflection, the pastel dress, the pink bow, the pigtails. I looked like a child trying to play dress up in a world of sophisticated adults. After 10 minutes of pep-talking myself, I decided to go back and face him. I couldn't let Vivian win by showing how deeply she had rattled me. But as I walked back down the quiet, carpeted corridor toward our private room, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. I was about to push it open when I heard Beckett's voice. He was on the phone. Yes, Brandon, she's with me, Beckett was saying, his tone carrying a heavy, exhausted sigh. No, she didn't get hurt physically, but this has to stop. I froze, my hand hovering over the brass handle. I don't know what game she's playing, Beckett continued, his voice cold and clinical. The squeaky, high-pitched princess voice, the breathless purring.
It's exhausting.
I can't stand sweet, submissive, girly girls who act like fragile dolls. It's entirely fake, and honestly, it's annoying. Tell her to go home. My heart stopped. The air left my lungs in a sharp, agonizing gasp.
It's exhausting.
I can't stand sweet, submissive, girly girls. It's entirely fake, and honestly, it's annoying. Every word felt like a physical blow, shattering the fragile, romantic fantasy I had spent the last 3 weeks carefully constructing. I had spent hours drinking warm honey water to keep my voice pitched high. I had watched countless tutorials on how to act cute and submissive. I had worn clothes I hated, smiled until my jaw ached, and giggled at things that weren't funny. And he had despised every single second of it. I stood in the dim hallway, the silence of the restaurant pressing in on me. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall.
The
embarrassment was so hot, so fierce, that it turned into a sudden, wild spark of anger. I didn't open the door. I didn't say goodbye. I turned on my heel, ran down the corridor, and fled into the cold night air. For the next 3 days, I locked myself in my dorm room. My roommate, Chloe, tried to coax me out with boba tea and hot pot, but I remained curled in my bed, staring at my phone.
Beckett had sent 3 texts on
the night I ran away. Where are you? Heather, answer your phone. Brandon said you made it back to your
dorm.
Good. No apologies. No explanations. Just his usual, clinical efficiency. By the 4th day, the sadness had fully burned away, leaving behind a volatile, chaotic cocktail of humiliation and spite. I had tried so hard to be the perfect girl for him, and he had discussed my efforts with my brother like I was an annoying, stray puppy. He thinks I'm a fake, fragile doll? I muttered, sitting up in bed, my hair a wild, tangled nest.
Fine.
I'll show him what a real nightmare looks like. Oh, Chloe said, looking up from her laptop. That's the look you get before you set something on fire. What are you planning? Nothing, I whispered, a dark, maniacal smile spreading across my face. Just a little rebranding. I knew Beckett's schedule. Tonight was the grand final warm-up stream for his esports team. It was a massive event, pulling in millions of live viewers across multiple platforms. He would be locked in his streaming room at his off-campus apartment, the very apartment where my brother, Brandon, also lived. And Brandon, fortunately for me, had gone out for a late-night gym session, leaving his master admin tablet on the kitchen counter. Brandon had given me the passcode to the tablet months ago so I could use his streaming subscriptions. What Brandon hadn't realized was that his tablet was synced to the apartment's Smart Hub network, which controlled the stream overlays and moderator privileges for Beckett's broadcasting software. At 9 p.m., I snuck into their apartment building. Using the spare key Brandon kept under the doormat, I slipped inside. The apartment was quiet, save for the low, rhythmic hum of Beckett's voice coming from behind his closed door. He was live. I quietly walked over to the kitchen island, picked up Brandon's tablet, and unlocked it. Within seconds, I had accessed the local network stream controller. On the screen of the tablet, I could see his live broadcast feed. He was in the middle of a high-stakes match, his fingers flying across his keyboard with terrifying mechanical speed. His face was a mask of cold, absolute focus. The live chat was moving so fast it was a blur of colors. My hands trembled with a sudden rush of adrenaline. A fit of sheer, dramatic panic seized me. I was going to burn his perfect, untouchable reputation to the
ground.
I opened the broadcast overlay input, a tool usually reserved for moderators to display official announcements or sponsor messages directly on the screen. With fingers flying like a woman possessed, I typed, "Hilarious. Honestly, you're not even my type." I hit enter. The text flashed in bright, bold pink letters right across the middle of his gameplay screen. The chat went dead silent for a fraction of a second before exploding into a frenzy. But I wasn't done. I typed again, my heart pounding against my ribs. "You uptight poser. I already have a new man. He's a college quarterback, sweet, gorgeous, and doesn't look like he's running on empty." I pushed the overlay live. It was pinned. Millions of viewers were staring at my dramatic, bitter manifesto, written under the official moderator tag. Inside his gaming room, Beckett was executing a flawless defensive maneuver. His eyes, sharp and unwavering, were fixed on the primary monitor. Then, the pink text materialized. "Hilarious. Honestly, you're not even my type. You uptight poser. I already have a new man." Beckett's fingers froze on the keys. In a high-level pro match, a single millisecond of hesitation is fatal. His character was instantly caught in a crossfire, his health bar vaporizing to 0. In a spectacular explosion of digital light, the game was lost. But Beckett didn't even look at the defeat screen. His dark eyes slowly drifted to the overlay text, his pupils contracting with a sudden, dangerous intensity. The live chat was moving at a speed that threatened to crash the streaming platform. What is happening? Did Reaper just get dumped by his mod? Who is the quarterback? Oh my god, the cold god of gaming just got humbled live on stream. Look at his face. He looks like he's about to murder someone. Beckett didn't say a word. For the first time in his legendary, flawless esports career, he didn't offer a polite sign-off. He didn't thank his sponsors. With a single, violent motion, he reached out and ripped the power cable from the back of his PC. The stream went pitch black. In the sudden silence of the apartment, the heavy scrape of his gaming chair echoed through the walls. Standing in the kitchen, Brandon's tablet slipped from my fingers, clattering onto the marble countertop. The sheer gravity of what I had done finally crashed down on me. I had just sabotaged a multi-million-dollar broadcast. I had publicly humiliated the most prideful, aloof man in the city. Oh my god, I whispered, my voice trembling. I need to leave. I need to leave.
Right now.
I grabbed my purse, turned on my heel, and bolted toward the front door. I didn't even make it halfway out of the building. I had just reached the heavy fire door of the concrete stairwell when the apartment door behind me slammed open with a deafening crash. Heather. His voice didn't sound cold anymore. It was deep, raw, and laced with a terrifying, primal fury that sent a shiver of pure panic straight down my spine. I didn't look back. I threw my weight against the fire door, slipping into the dim, shadow-drenched stairwell, and began to run down the concrete steps as fast as my heels could carry me.
Clack, clack, clack.
My heels clicked frantically against the concrete. The stairwell was illuminated only by the faint green glow of the emergency exit signs. Heather, stop running. The heavy fire door at the top of the stairs slammed open, echoing like a gunshot. The sound of his heavy, rapid footsteps descending the stairs was terrifyingly fast. He was catching up to me with ease. My breath hitched. I tripped over the hem of my pastel dress, my hand scraping against the rough concrete wall as I barely managed to keep my balance. Suddenly, a strong, iron grip hand wrapped around my wrist, pulling me backward. I let out a sharp cry, spinning around as my back collided hard with the cold concrete wall of the stairwell. Beckett stood over me, his chest heaving with heavy, ragged breaths.
The dim
green light caught the sharp angles of his face, making him look incredibly dangerous. The pristine, untouchable god of gaming was completely gone. His hair was messy, his eyes were wild with a dark, possessive fury, and his jaw was clenched so tightly a muscle leaped in his cheek. Let me go, I cried, tears of fear and frustration finally spilling over my
cheeks.
I struggled against his grip, but he didn't budge. He pinned both of my wrists above my head against the wall, trapping me completely within his massive
frame.
You have a lot of nerve, Beckett whispered, his voice dangerously low, his hot breath brushing against my ear. You hijack my stream, embarrass me in front of millions of people, lie about some quarterback, and then try to run away. I didn't lie. I sobbed, lifting my chin defiantly, though my voice was trembling. He is gorgeous. He's sweet. He doesn't look like an uptight poser who runs on empty. Beckett's eyes darkened further. He leaned in closer, his chest pressing against mine, cutting off any remaining space between us. Is that so? He murmured, his gaze dropping to my lips before rising to meet my tear-filled eyes. You think I'm running on empty, Heather?
Do you want to find
out how much energy I actually have? You told Brandon I was annoying, I whispered, my voice breaking as the core of my pain finally slipped out. You said my voice was exhausting.
You said
you couldn't stand me. Beckett froze. The fury in his eyes flickered, replaced by a sudden, complex realization. You heard that, he said quietly.
Yes.
I heard every word. I cried, trying to shake my hands free from his grip. I spent weeks trying to be the kind of girl you'd like.
You drank warm honey.
Water. I practiced that stupid princess voice until my throat hurt. I wore these ridiculous pastel dresses because I thought you liked sweet girls. And you just laughed at me with my brother. I looked down, my tears dripping onto the front of my dress. Beckett stared at me, his grip on my wrist slowly softening, though he didn't release me. His gaze drifted to the pink silk bow on the front of my collar, the very symbol of the fragile doll persona I had forced myself into. Slowly, deliberately, his long fingers reached up. He gripped the pink silk bow. With a sudden, firm pull, the delicate fabric shredded under his fingers, the pieces fluttering down to the concrete floor, like fallen petals. I gasped, looking up at him in shock. I didn't laugh at you. Beckett whispered, his hand resting gently against the bare skin of my collarbone, his thumb tracing the rapid beat of my pulse. I was angry, Heather, because I didn't want a fragile, manufactured doll. He leaned down, his lips brushing against my temple, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that sent a violent shiver down my spine. I wanted the girl who brazenly flirted with me in my living room. I wanted the girl who ate a whole steak and lied to my face about it. I wanted the chaotic, shameless little predator who called me husband on a live call. My breath caught. You, I stammered, my heart racing. You like that? I was losing my mind trying to keep my hands off you, Beckett admitted, his voice thick with a dark, intense emotion. His hand moved up his fingers, tangling in my hair, tilting my head back, so I had no choice but to look into his eyes. But you kept hiding behind that ridiculous, fake persona.
It was
Exhausting because I wanted the real you, Heather. Not some sweet little princess who looked like she'd break if I touched her. His gaze darkened as his thumb brushed over my lower lip. But now that I know you're a bad girl, he whispered, his breath hot and dangerous against my ear, even bad girls have to be punished. Starting with that quarterback. Before I could process his words, his lips crashed down onto mine. The kiss was nothing like the gentle, sweet romance I had imagined. It was fierce, possessive, and entirely consuming. Beckett kissed me like a man who had been starving, his hands gripping my waist, lifting me slightly off the concrete floor, so I was completely dependent on him. The taste of him, cool, minty, and intoxicating, flooded my senses, erasing every lingering doubt and fear. When he finally pulled back, my lips were swollen and my chest was heaving.
he.
Rested his forehead against mine, his dark eyes still burning with an intense, territorial light. There is no quarterback, is there? He demanded softly, his fingers digging lightly into my hips. I swallowed hard, my cheeks burning.
I
might have made him up. A small, rare, and incredibly sexy smile tugged at the corner of his lips.
Good.
Because if there was, I would have had to destroy his career before it even started. You're very arrogant, I muttered, trying to regain some of my usual confidence. Only when it comes to what's mine, he replied smoothly, releasing his grip on my waist, but keeping his hand firmly wrapped around mine. Come on, we're going back inside. Wait, I panic whispered, looking down at my torn dress. Your stream, the overlay, everyone saw it. Let them look, Beckett said, his tone entirely indifferent to the chaos he had left behind on the internet. They need to know who my wife is anyway. By the next morning, the internet had officially lost its mind. The clip of the Reaper's stream being hijacked, followed by his unprecedented, abrupt shutdown, had gone viral across every social media platform. Reaper's quarterback rival was trending at #1. Brandon had practically broken down our dorm door at 8 a.m. Heather Colton, he yelled, pacing around our small living room while Chloe watched with a bowl of cereal, thoroughly entertained. What did you do?
The
Team manager has been calling me all night. The sponsors are in a panic. And Beckett has ignored every single call. He was busy, I said defensively, pulling the blanket tighter around my shoulders. Busy doing what? Brandon demanded, throwing his hands in the air. Busy punishing me, I muttered under my breath. What did you say? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Beckett. I'm outside your dorm.
come down.
I quickly scrambled out of bed, threw on a casual, oversized sweater and a pair of denim shorts and ran downstairs, ignoring Brandon's furious shouting behind
Me.
When I stepped out of the building, my jaw dropped. Beckett's sleek, black luxury sports car was parked directly in front of the entrance. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was Beckett himself. He was leaning against the hood of the car, wearing a fitted black t-shirt that showed off his muscular arms, dark sunglasses, and an aura of effortless wealth. A small crowd of college students had already gathered nearby, whispering and taking photos. When he saw me, he pushed his sunglasses down his nose, his dark eyes locking onto mine. Get in, he said, opening the passenger door for me. Beckett, what are you doing here? I whispered, yelled, quickly slipping into the leather seat to escape the staring eyes of my classmates. You're a public figure. People are going to recognize you. They already have, he said calmly, closing the door and walking around to the driver's side. As he pulled out of the parking lot, I stared at his profile. Are you not worried about the stream? Your manager must be furious. I told them the truth, Beckett said, his eyes fixed on the road. The truth? I squeaked. Which part? That my wife was throwing a tantrum because I didn't pay enough attention to her, he replied, his tone perfectly conversational. And that I had to go put her in her place. My face flushed a deep, vibrant red. I am not your wife, and I was not throwing a tantrum. Beckett reached over, his large hand wrapping around mine, his fingers intertwining with mine on the center console. He lifted my hand to his lips, kissing the knuckles gently. We can change the wife part whenever you're ready, he murmured. As for the tantrum, we'll see. He took me to a quiet, high-end private club on the outskirts of the city. The room was filled with soft jazz music and the scent of rich mahogany and leather. It was a place where the old money elite gathered to escape the public. We sat in a private booth, a bottle of fine wine resting and an ice bucket beside
us.
Why did you bring me here? I asked, looking around the opulent space. Because we need to talk about our future, Beckett said, his gaze steady and intense. And because Vivian will be here shortly. I froze. Vivian? Why is she coming? My family arranged a meeting, Beckett explained, his voice turning cold.
They
want us to announce an engagement. They think Vivian is the perfect match for the family's image. A cold knot formed in my stomach. The reality of his background, the old money, traditions, the strict family expectations, suddenly felt very real and very daunting. I was just a college student, the sister of his roommate, a girl who had made a fool of herself on his live stream. Beckett, I whispered, looking down at my hands. Maybe Vivian is the right choice for you. She's elegant. She's sophisticated. She doesn't make a mess of your life. Beckett's hand suddenly gripped mine, his hold firm and unyielding. Heather, look at me, he commanded. I lifted my eyes to meet his. I don't want elegant, he said, his voice raw with a fierce sincerity. I don't want sophisticated. I don't want a woman who plays a part to please my family.
I
want you, the chaotic, beautiful, stubborn girl who makes my heart beat faster than any championship match ever could. He leaned across the table, his eyes burning with a deep, unwavering devotion. If my family wants an announcement, I'll give them one. But it won't be with Vivian. The door to the private room opened, and Vivian walked in, looking as flawless and elegant as ever. But when she saw me sitting next to Beckett, her hands tightly bound together, her composure finally slipped, a flash of genuine anger crossing her face. Beckett, she said, her voice dropping its polite tone. What is she doing here? This is a private family matter. Beckett stood up, pulling me up with him. He wrapped his arms securely around my waist, pulling me flat against his side. Vivian, Beckett said, his voice ringing with a cold, absolute authority. Tell my aunt and my father that the engagement is off. I've already chosen my partner. Vivian stared at him, her eyes wide with shock. You're choosing her? A girl who publicly humiliated you? A girl who acts like a child? She doesn't act, Beckett replied, his gaze softening as he looked down at me. A warm, genuine smile finally breaking across his handsome face. She is entirely real, and she is the only woman I will ever love. Vivian stood frozen, her perfect facade completely shattered. Without another word, she turned and swept out of the room, her high heels clicking furiously against the hardwood floor. I looked up at Beckett, my heart overflowing with a sweet, breathtaking warmth. Did you mean that? I whispered. Every word, he said, leaning down to capture my lips in a soft, deeply tender kiss. Now let's go home, wife. We have a lot of Livestream time to make up for. 3 months later, the esports championship trophy sat glinting on the mantle of our new, shared apartment. The internet had eventually moved on from the quarterback scandal, especially after Beckett made an official post on his social media accounts with a photo of our intertwined hands, captioned simply, "Found my permanent carry." Brandon had finally stopped screaming, though he still grumbled every time he saw Beckett helping me with my college calculus homework. You know, I said, leaning back against Beckett's chest as we sat on the plush living room sofa. I still have that pastel dress. The one with the torn pink bow. Beckett's arms wrapped tighter around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. Do you? Yes, I teased, turning my head to press a kiss to his jaw. Do you want me to wear it for you tonight? I can put on the princess voice again. If you squeak at me even once, Heather, Beckett whispered, his voice dark and playful as his hands slid beneath my sweater, tracing the warm skin of my waist. I'll have to find a very creative way to silence you. I giggled, winding my arms around his neck, pulling him down for a kiss that tasted of sweet strawberry cream soda and pure, chaotic love. I'd like to see you try, husband.